A very busy night last night with severe weather, tornadoes, hail, and high winds from Ohio down to North Texas. The world's hot spot, 112 degrees in western Mali. And the world's cold spot outside of Antarctica, that's going to be on the Greenland ice cap, minus 52, up there at 10,000 feet above sea level. The weather this evening, showing a polar front extending from Virginia into South Texas. A couple waves on that boundary, one up there in Virginia, that was partly associated with that round of severe weather in the Midwest. And another wave found across the southern Rockies, moving through the El Paso area, and strong winds showing up on the surface chart. And further up north in Alberta Clippers starting to make its move into the Dakotas, and that'll move southeast through the Great Lakes region into parts of the Midwest over this weekend. The 500 millibar chart shows a highly amplified pattern, a large ridge across the western U.S., and the formation of this omega block. That's anchored by this cutoff low across the southwestern U.S. and this deep vortex south of the Gulf of Alaska. Embedded in that northwesterly flow, we find a couple of troughs, one over Ontario and a stronger one across Winnipeg into Bismarck. Then further south, we see a separate stream along the Gulf Coast. That's pretty much under anticyclonic flow, however, out to the west. Parts of West Texas and New Mexico coming under the influence of troughing and falling upper-level heights. The northeastern U.S. under the influence of cold air advection, northerly flow across New York, Pennsylvania, and New England. No significant hazards for today. Small craft advisories along the coast of New England from about Portland down to Block Island. Yesterday, a couple of rounds of storms and severe weather. This goes back to about 6 in the morning. You can see a large MCS moving across Illinois and Indiana during the morning hours, and of course that laid down a boundary that would become important later on during the day. Then as we go through the afternoon, heating and the regeneration of new cells across northwestern Ohio all the way down towards the St. Louis area. Some of these cells did become severe. Right around the time of this image, 6 tornadoes reported around Ohio during the evening, extensive damage around Indian Lake, Ohio. 1 tornado reported during the evening in Indiana near Winchester. Fortunately, the severe weather did not last too long, and we saw those storms congeal into a large MCS and cross the Appalachians overnight. Moving down into the southeastern U.S., we pick up that polar front right through here. Down to the south, it looks like a warm day for Florida, possibly 90 degrees in some parts of western Florida near Tampa. Further to the west along the Gulf Coast, this is going to be a potential area for severe weather. We have a slight risk in effect for the Mobile and New Orleans area. The satellite imagery showing one particularly strong storm around the Slidell area. That's south of the frontal boundary and tracking east-northeast into Mississippi. And as we record this at 1:55 p.m. Central, we have a confirmed tornado east of Slidell crossing into Mississippi right there along the coast. Unfortunately, the Slidell radar appears to be out of service. Some very heavy rainfall last night across Arkansas. We've been talking about that very high precipitable water for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and Arkansas got it 4 to 6 inches on the ground overnight, some areas possibly in excess of 6 inches. And just for the record, this is how it all unfolded. Wednesday night, we had a couple tornadoes touch down in northeastern Kansas. Those moved on off as an MCS into Missouri and Iowa. So now we pick it up yesterday about 3 in the morning, get that break as we get the low-level jet established and bringing up that moisture. Then we get the daytime heating and storms going up from Tulsa all the way down towards Bowie, Texas. Some of those did become severe, and we had one tornado report a little bit later around McKinney. It's not showing up just yet. That comes together right about there. That's going to be that cell on the tail end. Also, numerous cells producing wind and hail reports all the way up into the Ozarks. We go into the overnight hours. Large MCS through Arkansas, that's dumping all that rain through the Red River region, all the way up into the Boston Mountains. And that brings us into this morning, MCS moving off the map and down into Louisiana and Mississippi. So with that cold pool driving everything south, we've got to shift our perspective south a bit. You can see that boundary right there along Interstate 10. That's going to be the leading edge of that cold air. All that outflow is pushed south, and we're going to see regeneration of convection around Del Rio and San Antonio a little bit later this afternoon or evening. They do have a enhanced risk from SPC for severe weather in that region. You can already see there at the very end, things look like they're about to fire west of Del Rio. That's going to be one cell on the Serrano del Burros, and other cells are possible in the southern hill country region. And let's take a quick look at that surface map. We've got a ridge up to the north, northerly and northeasterly flow through Texas, with the frontal boundary down in South Texas. And that's pretty important because that helps us understand the satellite picture. It's got a very disorganized look, and that's because of convective overturning. We've had a series of MCSs and outflow moving through this region. So the only really potent area for convection is going to be down here around Del Rio, and you can see a little bit of a difference in the air mass right in here. We've got transverse bands up around Junction, and then down to the south, more of a unstable warm sector regime. Further up to the north, upslope flow working into the Trans-Pecos. This is going to be layers of stratus and stratocumulus banked up against the Davis Mountains and the Sacramento Mountains. The northern plains looking rather clear. However, a lot of new snow on the ground in Wyoming and Colorado. Big snow in Denver, 12 inches at Denver, 15 inches at Aurora, 22 at Boulder, and 36 inches of snow at Estes Park. Out in the Great Plains itself, we've got a red flag warning today for much of western South Dakota, wind advisories up into eastern North Dakota for west winds gusting to 50 miles per hour. In the southwestern U.S., a cutoff low spinning in Arizona, producing a large swath of wintry weather and precipitation across the southwestern region. Here we see snow in northwestern Arizona along Interstate 40 between Seligman and Kingman. This photo is on Mount Charleston, west of Las Vegas, up at about 9,000 feet. And that was one area I used to go hiking back when I worked in Nevada. Taking a look at the water vapor imagery, we can really pick out those convective bands. One big one from the Mogollon Rim up to southwestern Utah, a couple of other bands across the Painted Desert, and then we get into somewhat drier air in New Mexico. The snow line is at about 6,500 to 7,000, I believe. It is coming down as snow at Flagstaff. Some of the mountains could see up to 1 foot of snow, but below 6,500 the accumulations should be much less. Let's go back to that visible imagery for a moment. There is the upper level low. Further out to the east, that gets into the main baroclinic zone and the location of the polar front jet, and that means strong winds, especially back here in this dry sector. And we do see mountain wave activity across northwestern New Mexico at this hour. And this is what I'm referring to. This is the 300 millibar chart up at the top of the troposphere. Jet max across southeastern Arizona, pointed right at Albuquerque. So this area right here, this is an area of potential high winds at the surface. Here we have the surface pressure and the colored areas. Those are going to be the wind gusts. And you can see that these are concentrated between the Front Range and the Mogollon Rim. So this is on the high country in the Four Corners area. Gusts up to 30 to 40 knots. Also very gusty through southern Nevada as well, all the way back to the Sierra Nevadas. Going into the evening, we see things gradually start to improve. The gusts start subsiding below 30 knots, And by the time we get up to tomorrow morning, looking much better. In the northwestern U.S., clear skies are the rule. We do have wind advisories in the Salt Lake City area. I think those are about to expire, but across the rest of the region, looking pretty good. So there's how it all looks there on the surface chart. The upper level low located right in this area, you can see there's not really much in the way of surface boundaries because the cutoff low tends to be quasi-barotropic, which means it's not really involved with any frontal systems. Here's how things look in the Pacific. The flow out there highly meridional, so this front is heading mostly to British Columbia and southeastern Alaska. Canada looking pretty good for this afternoon. I did not find any advisories anywhere, but a lot of cold air stacked up in the Northwest Territories, Yukon, and Alaska. And there's the Atlantic, stormy, pretty much as we would expect this time of year, and it looks like this storm track is mostly heading across the UK up into Scandinavia. So let's check out that forecast going into tonight and tomorrow. Looking fairly nice except for this cold air coming out of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas. That'll affect mostly the Great Lakes area and the Midwest going into the weekend. Remaining cloudy in Texas because that upper level low is still out to the west. If you look at that thickness pattern, that's going to be those dashed red lines. That implies low upper level heights across Arizona. And when we have that low out to the west, we get the southwesterly flow across the south central U.S., and we get some overrunning. So it's not really a fair weather pattern at all, and that keeps the rain and clouds in place. Some more rain for the northeastern U.S. for Sunday as this occlusion works through that area, then dry advection, snow showers, and maybe some lake effect snows in parts of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York. Going into next week, looks like a lot of high pressure across the central part of the country. Nothing on the west coast until later in the week. And just a series of waves moving through that southern stream across the Gulf Coast region. Very much a El Nino type pattern for this time of year. And then going into Thursday and Friday, some changes on the way. This is very indeterminate, but looks like some cold air could be spilling into the central U.S. The details on this are not really all that clear, but looks like a reinforcing shot of cold air into Texas, the Gulf Coast, and central U.S., and then the Pacific gets active once again going into the late part of March. Yeah, that last panel there, 240 hours, that looked very formidable, but I expect that's going to change a whole lot between now and then. Anyway, that's all I got for this evening. I want to thank our many Patreon supporters, people like Stuart Adendorf, Jay and Kate, Jacob M., Tom Detterman, James Taylor, William Oosterbahn, all you people helping to support the program. Thank you very much for that support. I really do appreciate that. Okay, so I guess I am off and hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday for the supporters and on Wednesday for everybody else. Take care. Bye-bye.